So I'm at a nightclub with my thin best friend. Near the end of the night, we're approached by a random guy who is alone. He has a heavy accent and tells us he just moved here from Russia. He tells us his name is Jesse. Doesn't sound like a very Russian name, and I'm immediately on guard. This friend of mine has a tendency to pick the worst guys. I'm talking like, in a room full of people, she will somehow manage to pick out the single craziest guy in there and start dating him. And being as close as we were, I always managed to get sucked into it. This night is no exception. I pull her away from Jesse, but not before he manages to get my friend's phone number. Later, as we are in her car, ready to drive home, she gets a call from Jesse. She answers, and his voice rings out on her car speaker. "Can you give me a ride home?" "No!" I immediately mouth from the passenger side. She's silent. "I just live around the corner from the club," he persuades. She reluctantly agrees and hangs up. I ask her why he can't take an Uber, or walk if it's that close. But it's my friend's car, and she wants to be nice and give him a ride. So we pull back in front of the club, and he hops in. During this short car ride, he manages to get out a sob story about how he moved here to start over with his 1-year-old son. His wife back in Russia died in childbirth. My friend is eating this up, and I hate him almost immediately. The next day, he's texting and calling my friend, asking her out. She at least has the sense not to want to go out with him alone, asking me to come along with the guy I was dating at the time. So we go to the beach and drink a few beers. Jesse takes his and wanders off alone. My guy joins him and I see them chatting for a while. I distinctly remember him describing Jesse later that night. I like the guy. He seems a little lonely. I'm wondering why no one can see the red flags but me. Then again, I always did have a sense for these things. The night goes relatively smooth. As the weeks go by, the four of us hang out a couple more times. Jesse keeps trying to invite himself over to my friend's place. I beg my friend to, if nothing else, keep her address private. Do not let him know where you live. Thankfully, she thinks this is a smart policy. He seems oddly fixated on going specifically to her home. As the weeks go by, he shows us pictures of his son, and even shows us a picture of his son's birth certificate, which seems a little bit overcompensating. But I never meet this supposed son and have no idea where he is during all these outings Jesse was going on with us. I ask him plenty of personal questions, trying to figure him out, and I think he knows I'm on to him. But soon enough, my friend starts dating someone else, who is an entire other story in itself, and Jesse wants to be the only guy in her life. He becomes possessive, and makes her choose, him or the other guy. Unfortunately, for Jesse, she chooses the other guy. He is furious. The next day, Jesse is blowing up her phone. Texts, calls, voicemails. When we finally listen to them, they are increasingly violent, full of cursing. The last voicemail reveals everything. It was all a lie. There is no son or wife. He calls us idiots. The last words he speaks say that she'd regret it, and he will make her explode. I shudder to think of it now. So she blocks him, and life goes on. But due to the next boyfriend being even crazier than this one, I eventually need to take a break from this girl. We go our separate ways, and yet, the nagging feeling about Jesse never goes away. Jesse often pops into my head, and I get the worst eerie feeling. A while down the road, I end up catching up with her over text. Even after our falling out, She can hardly wait a few texts and reconnecting to ask me if I remember Jesse. My blood instantly turns cold. I say yes. She sends me the link to a news article. It's about a Russian man arrested for a crime while trying to flee the country. He has a very Russian name I've never heard before. As I read the details of the crime, I'm horrified. Turns out, he murdered his ex-girlfriend by shooting her 5 times. I look at the photo of the suspect. It's Jesse. He got life in prison after making a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. So Jesse, I'm glad that we will never meet again.